TradeSquare is Australia's first business-to-business marketplace connecting people, brands and organisations into this diverse ecosystem in a unique global landscape. Through pivoting, transforming and reshaping, Australian businesses have an opportunity to create the model for the future that aligns with the world's needs and leveraging the power of a collaborative approach. Through the TradeSquare podcast, we will bring together dynamic, diverse and thought-provoking leaders from business, government and organisations to have conversations to further enable new thinking for the future. Welcome to TradeSquare, Australia's leading B2B marketplace. I'm Catherine Vandermeulen and joining me today is Di Lee, co-founder of Dawn Media Productions. Welcome to the TradeSquare podcast, Di. How are you?
Good, thanks, Catherine. Thank you for asking me to be part of your podcast.
So tell us, who is Di Lee?
When I looked at that question, I thought to myself, how do I answer that question? First of all, my first initial that came to mind was that I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm also a sister, a friend, and also a community activist. And then I thought, well, what would I like to write on my epitaph at the end of the day? And I use that. And that's actually, I live my life based on what I'd like to have written on my epitaph, is that I'm a woman who is so passionate about, shining the light on unheard conversations, and that she really lived her life and she lived her passion, and she's there to ensure that those that are not heard, can be heard and can be seen. And she lived her life how she wanted to be. A child rising from the Vietnam War ashes. So that's, I think, around my epitaph is what I'd like on my epitaph when I die. So that's how I thought, well, is that who Di Lee is? At the end of the day, that's who I am.
Can you share more about where that passion came from, about you wanting to shine a light and give people that voice?
Look, I think it came from the fact that I came here as a refugee, as a child of 7 years of age, when I witnessed the fall of Saigon and losing, my birth country, not knowing what actually happened. And nobody told me what happened. Nobody was telling, none of us knew that Vietnam was going to fall or Saigon was going to fall. And we were forced to run. And you still did not get the full story of actually what happened. And I think that drove me unconsciously, all my life to find out what happened and why did it happen. And I went on a search, and, by sheer coincidence, I actually landed a job as a journalist. It wasn't something that I set my mind to do, but falling into that journalism world allowed me to explore stories from people like myself. I was forever looking for that answer of what actually happened in Vietnam. Why did we flee? I lost my father during the war. So it's my mum, single mother, raising her 3 daughters here in Australia. She couldn't speak a word of English. She couldn't talk to anybody. She's not connected. And so we had a very disruptive upbringing. So I think I was on that search to find out if there were others like me. And if there were, how did they survive and how did they manage? How did they build themselves up? And so I think that's where it stemmed from. Forever looking for that story, that answer.
What a beautiful story. Thank you so much for your vulnerability to share that story. So tell us about your call to adventure to launching Dawn Media Productions.
It was really, I think, again, it stemmed from that storytelling. I last year, through COVID, prior to Dawn Media Productions, I had a Dawn not-for-profit whereby we were running workshops, and I was advocating for diversity and inclusion. And I was going into corporate sector to really talk about the lack of diverse representations at the leadership level across our mainstream institutions. And I was so driven by that because I looked around and I couldn't see anybody who have paved the way for people like me. What I mean by people like me is, English isn't my first language. I learned English when I came to Australia. And so, you always have that fear of, will you fit in, and are you good enough to be taking a leadership role? And it never occurred to me that I could play a role in shaping decision making at that decision making level. And so for me, I ran that workshop and those cultural workshops for a few years until COVID hit us in 2020, like many. And I thought, oh my God, I can't run workshops anymore. So what can I do? And so beginning 2020, I started to run a vodcast, not podcast. It's on video on YouTube, and ensuring that it's a platform for diverse voices and perspectives to be shared without triggering fear, without triggering hatred. Because I felt that throughout the whole COVID period, everybody was so locked down in fear more than anything else, and that was causing. And I knew that it will lead to a lot of mental health issues. And so I started a conversation around an empowering and inspirational conversation to look at current issues from a different perspective. And at the end of 2020, after when COVID started to ease, I thought, well, how do I then also create a business out of this? Because, for the last 6 years, I've been doing everything as not-for-profit. And with a group of women in businesses who said, look, I think what you did through the Dawn, the podcast, you can create a business out of that. And so we came up with the business idea of, impacting the world one conversation at a time and one bite size at a time. And so that's where the Dawn Media Productions initiative business came out of, got created.
So I know that you wear many hats and in many life roles. What are the biggest focuses in your roles that really support Australian businesses?
For me, I actually set up out here in the Southwest. I set up a Southwest Entrepreneurial Hub because I'm so the community out here in the Southwest, majority are migrants and refugees, from that background, and a lot of them run small businesses, in particular food businesses, restaurants, cafes. And I thought that I saw that they did not actually have, that they weren't networking, that they weren't coming together to get the best information to how to build their business. And so I started this group again, just at the end of, just actually in 2019, to bring together businesses to find out, to give them the opportunity to work together, to collaborate, and also to actually find ways to improve the way that they do business. Because a lot of businesses out here are still running, how they used to run back in the 70s, 80s when they first arrived in Australia, and they just set up a business, not actually knowing how to do it properly. And a lot of businesses, after 12 months or 24 months get shut down and get passed on to the next generation, or their kids run it, and then it's still running like ad hoc. There isn't a plan to grow their businesses. And I then brought a lot of people who've been in businesses for decades, organizing forums so that these family businesses can actually learn something, can get the tools to improve their business, and to know that their business is not just locally, but they can actually sell the businesses outside of the local area. So that's how the work that I've done around small businesses out here in the Southwest. We've got about 15,000 small businesses in our Fairfield Local Council area.
Wow. And so over the last 12 months, how have you seen businesses really evolve and add more value to the world? You spoke about a lot of these businesses, transforming and trying different things and getting out of their traditional comfort zones. How have you really seen that evolution?
Look, out here, obviously a lot of the restaurants and cafes got really impacted by COVID in the last 12 months. But some of the ones that the younger generation, what they've done is they've obviously taken it online. They saw the opportunity to then transform the operations of their business. Um, it is often in the past very much a cash based society, and so the next generation have taken on the digital technology, implementing a lot of their the digital technology that's needed to run the business smoothly, and I've seen that, and slowly. Such as the contactless the payment is now also in some businesses that are utilizing it here. So I think it's really great to see that they have evolved. I mean, there's still more to be done, but I think COVID has really pushed a lot of these business to take up a lot of technology tools that they have not taken up before.
And so, thinking about the people behind those businesses, how have resilient, dynamic, and resourceful individuals played a key role in working towards transforming Australian businesses?
My gosh, resilience. Resilience, resourceful, I think is what this community out here is about. And I think, as I said, a lot of them were from, war-torn conflict zones. They had to survive there, and so they had to survive here. And surviving in a country that doesn't, where they had to learn the culture and the language. And I think they're very resourceful. During the last 12 months in particular, if you see it, our community were the first community that actually really isolated themselves as soon as the whole COVID thing got, heard about COVID. They were the first that wore masks before even the mask, where the government asked for people to wear masks. We were the first that wore masks. And so they are so resilient, and they rebuilt themselves. I've watched it in the last 12 months. They shut down, and it's family run businesses. So, it probably doesn't, in terms of payment, might not comply because family work there, and saving. A lot of them lost staff, and so they call in their family members to just help run the businesses. So they're finding ways to kind of stand back on their 2 feet again. And I think they're going to transform, the Australian economy tremendously with some of the work that's being done out here.
You mentioned earlier your great love of telling and sharing a story, and maybe that came from your background and your years in journalism. What are some of the key ways for Australian businesses to tell and share their story in a meaningful way?
Look, I think it's very hard for people to be vulnerable. And I think a good story have to come from the heart. And I think to be able to share how you feel, what your thought processes are, what you went through, takes a lot of courage to do that. And I think for businesses, I think more today and moving into the future, we have to change the way we tell our stories. It's not just about, come and do business with me. This is a great product. This is a great service. It's about, why am I doing business with you? What's so special about you that I want to buy the service, or I want to buy the product from you? And I think more and more, as people are moving online, I think we're now moving online as a result of COVID. Everybody's spending more time online. So they're looking for that authenticity and that genuine voice that they can actually relate to. And if you take people on that journey of that human condition, I think that's where the power of a good story is. And so that's what I push for, for people just to be authentic, because there's a user-generated, the user-generated content is such an authentic content is so important, and it's going to be more important as we move into the future.
And what would be your top 5 tips for creating a voice as a thought leader to tell your story?
Well, be vulnerable, be prepared to share the most rawest moments of your journey, of your life. Second is to go into nothing. What I mean by that is basically not let the committee of voices in your head stop you, because it can stop you from sharing, because you might think people are judging you when they're actually not. And third is to persevere, is that to continue to really, if you want to share your story and you want to be heard, you need to make sure that you persevere and continuously share and tell your story. Because I've learned, and I've said this often, is people in life, people don't listen, they never have, they never will. And so you need to repeat that message so many times until they get so sick and tired of you. That's when that you know that they've heard the story. Fourth is to be really to be mindful of your message, how it lands on the other side, and what you're trying to say is making sure what you say is really going to contribute to people's and businesses and people's lives and to help them. And fifth is really be you, be your authentic you, and that way you stand out from the crowd, because each of us have a unique fingerprint. We all have that unique fingerprint of a unique story, and I think that maintaining that uniqueness about you is just be yourself.
So important. So, what is a key message that you are super passionate about, that you are advocating and championing through your work?
I say I live and breathe diversity and inclusion. I I I really believe that inclusion is really the key here. Is that while I champion for diversity, while I really want that and perspectives, faces, and cultures to be represented across our mainstream institutions, what's more important is the inclusive mindset. Is that if you are no matter how different you are, your perspectives are to mine, I want to be able to create a safe space enough so that we both can coexist, because it's so important that we have to live together in this world. And we've seen so many wars. I remember when I left, when I promised myself and I landed here in Australia that there'll be no more wars like the Vietnam War. And that was my dream. And you know what? Over the decades growing up, and I've witnessed so many wars still, and I'm thinking, why? Why are we still fighting? And I'm thinking, oh, because maybe it's just there are not enough inclusive leaders leading the world, and diverse leaders and women leaders. So that's where my passion is, and that's where I'm still driving to get that shift, to get that change in that dial of leadership.
And what are some of the hot topics in your office at the moment that are really exciting you?
Oh, what's exciting me at the moment is how to encourage, to give people the courage to be vulnerable, their vulnerable self, in order for them to really share their stories, so that we can create a world whereby there are great stories, there are authentic stories, as opposed to the whole fear triggering stories that we are that's dominated our media, dominated everywhere we read. The passion is to create more of this the stories that really, the unheard stories. We want that to balance out the whole world, whereby everything is like the doom and gloom of the world.
And so, over the last month, we have been interviewing women who choose to challenge. And that was obviously in alignment to the International Women's Day theme back in March. How do you choose to challenge, Di?
I gave this talk a few months ago about choose to challenge. I choose to challenge every day in my life. I choose to challenge the way we are, the lack of representation of diverse voices and and representations across our mainstream institutions. I am choosing to challenge the lack of women, and especially women of color, in the political arena. and I'm continuing to challenge that. So those are the two biggest challenges for me that I continue to do.
Well, thank you so much, Di, for sharing your world and your great storytelling strategies and tips for the world of TradeSquare.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Well, I hope that's of benefit to your listeners.
For more information on TradeSquare, head to www.tradesquare.com.au and support Australian business economic recovery and growth with a collaborative approach to the future of business.